Welcome to Sarah Talks Food for the Soul. So a lot of what I want to do with this blog is, yes, talk about food and nutrition and the stuff that we put into our bodies. But I also want to really get connected with the idea that we are body, mind, and spirit. You know, like it's all connected. And so I'm so excited to sit down today with Kathie Donovan. She is, you probably know her from her years in broadcasting and certainly the 14 years that she spent as co-host of Regional Contact. But Kathie's on a new mission. She's out doing workshops and seminars and teaching what she's learned throughout her life, meeting all of those inspiring people and sharing how she truly has figured out a formula for happiness. Today, we're talking about her book, Inspiration in Action, A Woman's Guide to Happiness. And she shares some of the power tools, as she calls them, that we can use in our lives to find that elusive happiness that we're looking for. Things like courage, gratitude, surrender and release, and having healthy boundaries. So I can't wait for you to have a chance to get to know this lady a little bit differently than you might have known her before in this conversation with Kathie Donovan, because I want you to love your life one bite at a time. Thank you so much for being with me today, Kathie. I'm thrilled to have you to have a conversation with about all sorts of awesome things that I'm looking forward to.
Me too, and congratulations, Sarah, on really stepping up in your own life and sharing your story with people, which I know is going to make a big difference for a lot of folks.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. I loved your book, Inspiration in Action. And if you don't have this book out there, I highly, highly recommend it. I devoured it in the first weekend that I got it. I was lucky enough to have Kathie sign it for me. I bought it at the Live the Smart Way Expo. And it just kept triggering so many similarities. I kept reading every page just thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe how I'm connecting with this woman. And that's a big reason as to why I'm chatting with you today. I'm so grateful for you to be here. And I just kept kind of reading through it and thinking about that whole theme of being happy. And what does happiness mean? And I know that for a lot of us, it's a little bit elusive. We just think, happiness is when I have this, or when I get that, or when I get that promotion, or if I have this, if I have a baby, or if I get married. And I really connected with a definition of happiness that I saw that you wrote on social media a while ago, and I'd like to share it with people. This idea of being happy, feeling happy, has become a double-edged situation. Everyone wants it, and yet so many people just aren't connecting with it. What the heck does it mean to be happy anyway? Well, here's my definition. When the incessant voice in your head, the one that reminds you of all the things you haven't done, what you are not, that you're not enough of something, that your dreams are impossible. That voice, when it's not in charge of my life, that's happiness to me. And Kathie, I just heard that and it was like a light bulb went off. I just love the idea of, it's that when I don't have this, when I'm not good enough. And even on the first page of the book, when you start writing, who am I to write this book kept going through your mind. And believe me, I keep thinking that, who am I to have a blog? Who am I to talk about health and wellness and fitness and food? I mean, I'm not a nutritionist. Who am I to share my story with people and try to connect? I mean, who am I? And so it comes up a lot. So I think we can all, relate to that. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about if that's still your definition of happiness, and maybe just kind of go a little further on what happiness means to you.
Sure. I think many people have their own idea of what happiness is. They think they know what happiness is, and very often they're chasing it outside of themselves. That's how I like to characterize it. Wayne Dyer said that the other day. So people are looking for happiness outside of themselves, and they forget that it's an inside job. It's something that happens inside of you. And in fact, happiness doesn't show up. We generate happiness. We generate joy. We generate misery. We generate whatever it is we're going to choose to feel. So for me, what I said on Facebook is still true. I believe that happiness is when my thinking mind, that busy body that's always nosing into my stuff, trying to discourage me from living large and living my dream, when it's not in charge of what's going on, when I'm in control of my thoughts, which is, by the way, the only thing we human beings have control over. We don't have control over life's events. We have control over how we respond to life's events and what we're going to do with those things. So when I teach the course in happiness, which is a course I teach based on the book, I go around the room and ask people at the very beginning, what's your definition of happiness? And sometimes they'll say contentment or good health or my family or being employed or something like that. And by the end of the weekend, they've totally got it. They recognize that happiness is just simply when you're in charge of what's going on in your head, because that is what produces your life.
Yeah, it's so important. I think that too many times we really think that it's external of us, that really it's when we have this thing or when we go to this place. And I love that it's that idea that happiness truly it is an inside job. And I know that it's so hard for people to kind of get around that idea that they get to choose their thoughts in each and every moment. I think it seems a little idealistic to think that in this horrible mess of a situation that maybe we're in, that we can choose happiness, or we can choose to see the brighter piece of it. But I think that more and more people are raising their consciousness. I'm seeing a lot of people, on Facebook, and with parents that have passed on, or tragic events that have happened. And yet I'm seeing in their posts that it's not all about the horrible situation that's actually going on, but more the divine peace that's coming through that as well. And I just think, amen to that. I'm just really proud of people to see that there's sort of a shift going on. I really think there is. And certainly it's, the Wayne Dyers of the world and the Oprahs and the Deepaks and all of these people that are coming more into the fray. But and more and more people are connecting with that idea that that's really the truth. And so I just think that that's, it has to just come down to, it's all about how we react to situations. It's truly all about thoughts becoming things, and we're able to choose our reactions, and we're able to choose those thoughts, and we're allowed to choose happiness in each and every moment. It's not easy to do. It's not always easy to do, but I think it's something that we can train ourselves to do.
And I think the other key there is acceptance of what is. Because until we accept what is, we can't shift it. Until you accepted you were an alcoholic, you couldn't shift that. We spend years trying to chase that away. I'm good. I'm good over here. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm fine. I can figure it out. But until we accept it, it's like when people want to lose weight, they're always complaining about their weight. Well, if you consider how law of attraction works, what you're asking for is to keep the weight. I mean, You want to feel healthy. You want to feel good. That's what you really want. And the other thing, too, is I think we have to acknowledge, grief happens. Terrible things happen. And in our society, Sarah, we're not encouraged to grieve. We're not encouraged to feel sad. Things happen. We need to be blue. Sometimes we need to pull the covers up for a few days and just, stay quiet. And I think that's really important. If you look at Facebook and you look at Instagram, people you admire are busy all the time. They're really, excelling and doing really well because they're out hustling constantly. Well, that's not a good role model for me, because I believe we have to accept the full rainbow of emotion and be with it. That's how we're going to feel happy, is if we live a full and complete life, and that includes all emotions.
I think that's really important. I think a lot of people do stuff a lot of stuff down, and I do think, and I'm guilty of this too. I probably don't want to post my junk. I don't want to post the negative stuff. I certainly grew up in a family where it was definitely, we wanted to post the good stuff, and it was, it wasn't supposed to be dwelling on the negative. And I think that there's a really good point to talking about, not everything is perfect here, people, and these things are going on. And so I think that perhaps in my own case, that was what was so freeing about sharing my story, that it was just like, I could finally just say the truth and just say, not everything is perfect in this world over here. Things really are.
Celebrate it.
Yeah.
We're going to celebrate that. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate it. I love that. One of the pillars, or one of the power tools, as you call them in your book, Inspiration in Action, A Woman's Guide to Happiness, is courage. And I'd really like to talk about the idea of courage. I think it's a really powerful power tool. And I wanted to talk about on page 47. I wanted to read this piece on page 47. It says, I also believe that it takes courage to share ourselves with others. Most of us have a long list of reasons why we keep our cards close to our chest, why we don't share ourselves. The reasons usually relate to past hurt and fear about what might happen if we open up to others. If we believe that we are not our thoughts, not our relationships, not our jobs, and not our past, then as we share ourselves with others, we signal to the law of attraction that we are available for some movement of energy, a new story, a new experience. I circled that and highlighted that and starred that. And it truly was part of the impetus for me to share my story, because I truly believe our secrets keep us sick. I say it all the time. And so for me, it was really important to be able to just say the truth, to just tell the truth and just to share that. And yes, that did take a lot of courage. It was extremely scary for me. I didn't look at it as courage at the time. I looked at it as I'm crazy and I'm very afraid to do this, but I did it anyway. So I'm wondering, speaking of that story and thinking of your own life, if you can share with us almost some tactics for people who might be mired or stuck in fear, and they really want to step out and they want to maybe do something, but they just don't know how to take that first step. Do you have some strategies that maybe you teach in your workshops or your seminars on how people can get courage when they're afraid?
Well, I think we have to talk physics for a few minutes.
Okay.
because all matter is energy. You know, this is what physicists have taught us. God bless them. I'm no physicist, but I do understand that concept, that all matter is energy. Our bodies, this chair I'm sitting in, the desk, the computer you have in front of you, your hair, your clothes, everything is just energy. And so it is with our thoughts and our feelings. They're just energy. And so when we come back to this idea of, you know, we have a choice about how we're going to think, that goes counterintuitive to what our logical so-called thinking mind perceives, right? Because it's all about the no, it's black and white, and you can't do that, and I'm afraid for you, so you better sit down. And it does a fantastic job of helping us. If all matter is energy, then we can shift the energy of our thoughts by focusing on something else, recognizing that the fear we feel is a default wiring as a human being. It's how we're wired. You know, back in the day when the Brontosaurolophus was going to come and get us, we had to have systems in place that would keep us safe from being attacked. So we still have these really old methods of protecting ourselves. And they really keep us stuck. And in North America particularly, you know, limited thinking is the way to go, with organized religion, organized politics, organized everything. You're either this or you're that. The fact of the matter is, you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And that takes courage to say. I don't care what people think anymore. It's just the truth. And I think we better stop denying it. We better stop pretending it's happening, because it's very freeing when you can acknowledge you're a spiritual being having a human experience. It's not limited. Then you can do whatever you want. And if you accept that notion that you are created by a power greater than you, whatever you call that power, I don't call it God necessarily. You can call it source, divine energy, whatever you want to call it. If you are created by that beautiful energy, then you must have that energy in you. And I say you are that energy. And so you are unlimited too. We ascribe all sorts of wonderful positive qualities to that power greater than us. And then we're over there going, oh, well, I don't really deserve to be. Well, that's just crap to me. Come on now. We are beautiful, every single one of us. So that's the stuff you have to get to before courage really becomes that power tool. You have to accept the fact that you are magnificent. It's very hard for our thinking mind to accept, because it wants to control us. It wants to keep us safe, wants to keep us contained, doesn't want to let us loose. So, you know, in your case, when you were thinking about your story, when you were working through your story and how you're going to share your story, you were recognizing this story has power. This story can help shift things for other people, as it has done for me. And that was courage coming along to help you stand in the truth of who you are. We can't really shift it out until we can stand in the truth and accept what's really going on. I did some training in California a couple of years ago with a guy named Brandon Burchard. I love the guy. He's just open. He's cool guy, eh? Yeah. So he stood in front of 600 people on the last day of this training. And he said, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, who am I to go out into the world and do whatever it is you think you want to do? And I thought, is he talking to me? Because I thought, who do I think I am that I'm going to go put up this book and go teach these courses and do publics? Who do I think I am, really? And he said, and here's the truth. Who are you not to? And right then and there, I remember it clear as a bell. I got my marching orders. Because if we all hide our light under a bushel, Sarah, the world is going to get sadder and sadder and sadder. The more of us who stand up in the truth and say, look, I was an alcoholic. This happened to me. I've done all my forgiveness work with this situation. I have a great relationship with my mom now. Do you know how beautiful that is? That is gorgeous. And it took great courage for you to share. And it inspires other people to stand in their truth and share whatever it is they need to do, so that we're not always trying to pretend everything's cool. And then I can be authentic with you and you can be authentic with me. And we're like pals because we get it. So courage is I call on courage by name all the time, because I want to name it so I can claim it. I'm feeling afraid. I don't know what the heck is going to happen because I can't see the future. I need some courage here to help me get through this next little step. And courage comes along and propels me over that puddle. And I get to the other side and I think, wow, if I did that, just imagine what else I could do. So courage becomes then your friend, and it becomes a very intimate thing that you're not afraid of. And when you see fear popping up, you can recognize it and you can just ask it to sit down, because courage is going to help you now. You're good with fear. Thank you very much. If the coast is clear, go ahead. I mean, if there's a big truck coming for you, stay where you are. But I think what we have to really recognize that courage is something that's always there for us to call on anytime we want. It's just you have to have the mindset for it to be welcome.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. I think that, we can all learn something from that. This idea of, even looking to our experiences and to say to those experiences, I went through this, not just for me, but for other people. I really like that idea that, who am I? Who am I not to? Yeah. I went through all of this stuff. I may as well share it with other people in hopes of maybe inspiring or helping or at least supporting or comforting other people that might have gone through the same kind of thing, or that are going through the same situation and feel like they don't have any way out of it, or don't imagine a life, in my case, without alcohol, or how could they possibly live the life of their dreams, because they're stuck in this way of life, or they don't want to leave, the drinking, because I understand that too, that feeling of fear of walking away from alcohol. How do I live in a world where I can't have a glass of wine at an event? How do I do that? And so, so I think that's really powerful for sharing things, not just for ourselves and to have that courage to go out there and to do that, but to share to help others. And I think that maybe if we look at it from that mindset, that can almost help us to bust through the fear. That might be one of the tactics or strategies that we're talking about for sure.
Maybe we're giving other people their marching orders today too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of leads us into one of the other power tools that you talk about in your book. And I love this idea of power tools. I think it's so awesome. I love the word power, no matter what. I think it's a great empowering word. And so you talk about surrender and release. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because for me, for sure, in my experience, I had to, well, I'll backtrack for a second. Surrendering and releasing and sort of clearing spaces. So first off, talking about getting rid of clutter in my life. And I think that was something that I really had to do in order to even take the next step that I did in my life just recently of, sharing my story and getting this blog out there. And now I'll be writing a book. I find for myself, whenever my physical space is messy or cluttered, I immediately have to go and declutter and clean it up and make sure that everything's kind of tidied away before my brain can kind of have that opportunity to just dream and to create. I find myself very stifled when I'm surrounded by clutter. And I know that you talk about that in the book. And you also touch on the idea that can mean also clearing out of people that aren't serving you anymore. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who are in friendships or in relationships or connected with people that those relationships don't serve them in a positive way, and yet they don't really know how to go about releasing those relationships. So I wondered if you could share a little bit, and you touch on it in the book, but share today, how can we do that? If we are in a situation, and I was in my life where, I was surrounded by a bunch of drinking people and I had to end those relationships. And I guess for me, it might've been easier because I was just able to say, this just isn't my lifestyle anymore. And I have to walk away from this. And I have to, unfortunately, kind of separate myself from you. And it's nothing about you. This is all about me right now. But maybe for other people where it's not so kind of black and white, how can we gracefully disassociate with people and things that just aren't serving us anymore?
I love that you use the word gracefully. And I would add courageously,
Mm,
because I think, the way I lay out the principles in my book is it starts with gratitude, and that's a whole other conversation. But then we move on to courage, because in courage, we stand in the truth of who we are, this spiritual being having a human experience. And when we start to recognize that courage is the thing that we'll use to figure out what we really want in this life, that's what you have to ask yourself. What do I really want? So, and I'm not referring to a new car, a new job. I'm referring to, what do you really want to feel? How do you really want to feel? And I can tell you in my life, through a lot of soul searching, this is what I came up with. I want abundance, beauty, joy, love, peace, prosperity, and wellness. And so if that's what I want, and every one of those is attached to a feeling, I want to feel abundant. If that's what I want to feel, then how are the stories in my head, the people in my life, how I spend my time, how are they in line with what I really want? Because we have to line up our thoughts, our words, and our actions to really attract what it is we really want. Michael Losier, the great Canadian writer, he said, us humans are really good, or we humans are really good at coming up with a list of things we want. We're just not always available to receive them. That really stuck with me, Sarah, because I couldn't figure out why, if the law of attraction is so simple to use, why are we all getting what we say we want? Well, we're not focusing on the right stuff. We're focusing on things. We're focusing on stuff outside of ourselves. So by focusing on what we really want underneath the hood, then we can start to ask ourselves, are there relationships in my life in line with what it is I really want? And if the answer is no, then you got to do something about that. And that's where surrender and release comes in, because there's always a lot of clutter in our lives, and we could speak metaphorically about that, or actual physical clutter. And you're right, if we're not working on moving that out, we're stuck. And if we're hoarding, we're just going to stay where we are. So we have to keep things fluid. Sometimes relationships, it's so beautiful when friendships grow with you, when you grow with them. But sometimes you just outgrow them, and it's okay. We're sort of led to think we need to feel guilty and badly about that, but that's just holding you down. So I talk about boundaries in my book as well. That's a later principle, but that's a really super important tool to use, because you can still have, I have many relationships that I've had for many, many years. I just have healthy boundaries with those people. I don't talk about the same things I talk about with yourself. I share myself very, very carefully now, so that you lovingly do it. You gracefully do it. You say to yourself, this is what I really want to feel. Does this person match with that? Are they helping me to feel that way? Am I helping them to feel good? And if the answer is no, then you got to start erecting a boundary in a loving way to create space for you to receive the relationships that are going to be beneficial for where it is you now with certainty know you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
How's
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it's so the idea of just getting clear, and then the idea that you don't have to break up with people that aren't, aligned with your vision of what you want to do in your life, or that don't have, the same philosophies or beliefs. And that's okay. Everyone is entitled to that, but it doesn't mean that you have to spend a lot of time with those people. And I just like that idea of boundaries, of really just, and that doesn't mean putting up walls around it. It just means we're not going to talk about this and this and this. When I'm with this person, we kind of can cover these things, and that's okay too. And it can be maybe a little bit more superficial. You don't have to get into all that other stuff, but you don't necessarily have to end relationships. It's just being very strategic and specific about who and what, when you spend your time, who you spend your time with, and what you talk about and share when you're with those people.
And sometimes you do have to end relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And as humans, we don't like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to do that in order for you to move forward in your life. Your life is about just having an experience. It's not a competition or a contest. It's about you working with you to be the best you can be. And that's all that matters. So if somebody is, as they say, harshing your mellow, you need to figure out how you're going to work that out so that you're okay. I mean, you're the most important person in your life. Mm-hmm. So if other people are just scared of change and want to keep you where they are, and it worries them that you want to move on, your drinking buddies, for example, that would be very threatening. So you have to decide, can I work with this or can't I work with it? And if you can't, then you just lovingly release it. And don't worry about it. You don't have to get into it. You don't have to do anything. You just find yourself busy, really busy.
Yeah. Yeah, really busy. Yeah, just things are crazy busy these days. Yeah,
Well, because you're busy working on yourself, so it's not a lie.
truly. Thinking about that concept, you talk about in your book that you had a challenging relationship with your mother, and I want to kind of touch on that idea. You talk about in the book that you finally had to give up the idea of seeking approval from your mom. And so I wonder, talking about this concept of, boundaries and ending relationships. I mean, we kind of can't end relationships typically with our parents, and we probably don't want to. How did you come to that? I don't know how much you want to get into today, but how were you able to get to a point of forgiveness with your mom? And how do you, how as parents, and you and I are both not parents, but how can parents maybe allow their kids to be who they want to be and to grow into these, wonderful people that they're born to be, but there are still rules and regulations in the home and all of those things. So I just wonder how parents can maybe understand that that their kids are here to do greater things, and even if it's not necessarily the way that they envisioned the child's life to be, how can maybe parents do a good job of respecting that and respecting maybe boundaries, or allowing their children to grow into the people that they have dreams of becoming?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I can certainly address the first part of it. But not being a parent, I would never, ever consider offering parental advice. It's not my genius, and I have no experience with it. I've watched a lot of parents. I've watched mine. I've got a lot of experience being a kid of parents, so I can talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is that as humans, as we educate ourselves and we grow as people, our jobs get easier because we're so much more accepting of everything. When we're not open-minded, when we're closed or limited, we think we know everything. So something that comes along that's different, i.e. a child who goes outside your paradigm, it's like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to clamp down on you. The more aware you are, the more awake you are, the more accepting you are. So I love that. And I love that as a grown woman now, I am that. I love that I'm the product of not that. Because the contrast is quite beautiful. And coming out the other side of it, I have so much love and compassion now for my parents and for what they had to do and deal with, and the lengths they went to provide for us, and the things they did to make my life easy that I couldn't even see at the time because I was so emotionally a mess. But what happened with me, and I have nothing to hide anymore, I hid it for so many years that it's so liberating to just make it a conversation that might help somebody else. I really appreciate that. Of course, therapy was my go-to. And when I started therapy, that was really when the healing began for me, when the acknowledgement began of the fact that my parents really did the very best job they could. And that was the conclusion of 3 years of therapy. My parents did the very best job they could. And I started to plant those seeds of forgiveness way back when my mom was still alive, and worked really hard to try to find a way to have a relationship with her. But what happened to me, Sarah, was my mom lived in another city, and I would travel. It was just a couple hours away, but I would travel to see her. And I would come home with a migraine headache because everything she talked about, everything that was between us when we were alone, was negative and miserable. And I had nothing in common, and I got nothing from her in terms of love or support or anything. I was in broadcasting. I was trying to figure out how to live my life. And I just got squelched all the time. So I would come home feeling terrible. And this went on and on until one day I had this idea that if I didn't say anything, if I just simply sat like this, then I was no audience for the show. And so I came up with this expression: if there's no audience, there's no show. And when I did that, the whole energy of our relationship changed, going back to this idea of everything, all matter, all thoughts, all everything being energy. I shifted the energy of our relationship by not engaging with her. And it left her nowhere to go. So it was a quieter visit. And what I did was then I insisted that my husband come with me always when I would visit her, so that I was never alone with her. And it made it so much easier. And by the end of her life, she allowed me to care for her, and we had a much better rapport. It wasn't ideal, but it was a lot better by the end of her life, because I just simply did not engage.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked after myself. I cannot fix anybody else. I can't ask anybody else to be any different than the way they are. I have to accept them as they are. And that's a big job for our thinking mind, because we're all in the, hey, beep, 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 you did that, you said that. Who cares? Who cares? So that's the stuff you have to work through. And when I came to that very simple conclusion, the whole thing shifted. And that's when I could really get at doing great strides with forgiveness too. So now I just have this overwhelming feeling of love and compassion and gratitude for everything my parents did for me. Because as I said, you know, I love your mom because she made you. I love my parents because they gave me the gift of life, and they helped to shape me to be the woman I am today.
Oh, that's so powerful. I feel really connected with you in that way, because I feel very strongly that, you know, I think we come up and through all of those experiences. We were supposed to have them. I think we were supposed to have the parents that we were given. And, you know, I was blessed to have two great parents, but my relationship with my own mom, it was challenging when I was a kid and going through teenage years. You know, it was really, really tough. And so it has come finally now to a place where I agree. I at one point, just a few years ago, I just said, I'm just going to forgive it all. I'm just going to let it all go. She's just a person. Woman doing the best that she could. She, you know, provided in the way that she knew how. She learned from her own mother on how to mother me, and whether or not it was the way that maybe I dreamed of being mothered. I mean, you know, come on, let's look at the good things that were given to me in that relationship. And so we are now just at a place when you talk about gratitude and forgiveness, and that's truly where I'm at. And I adore and love and respect my mother so much. And I tell her every opportunity I get that I just love and respect and adore her so much. And was my childhood perfect? No. And did she think it was perfect? Yes. You know, and that's okay. She can have her thoughts of what it was. And I love that she thinks it was perfect, because that's what she wants to believe. And, you know, I think she turned out two pretty great kids, you know? And so I just think that those are such key pieces. It's about gratitude and it's about forgiveness. I was telling you before we got started today that when I would babysit my niece and nephew, and just even, you know, getting them up and fed and clothed and bathed. And I just think of the work that it takes to be a parent. I mean, no matter what, I mean, I just have so much gratitude on having parents and certainly my mom to take care of me all of those years and to do the job that she did. So I think that you can make a decision, choose the thoughts, choose the beliefs that, you know, they did the best they could. And as you were saying earlier, and I love this quote by Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And, you know, and now my mom is doing better. You know, like the two of us now have this most amazing relationship where we really have come to an incredible place. And I'm just blessed beyond belief to have her in my life. I loved when you said, if there's no audience, there's no show. One of my favorite things you've said so far, and it's really sticking with me, and I'm going to keep that one for a while. If there's no audience, there's no show. And I think we can talk about that when we were talking about, setting up boundaries and maybe removing people from your life that just aren't serving you. If you've got people in your life, and I certainly know of people in my life that are, you know, negative, and it's always rotten and everything's terrible. And, you know, the last thing they need is for me to say, well, just change your thoughts and it's going to be great. I just choose to not say much in those situations. But I think the idea of no audience, no show is going to serve me quite well moving forward.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I love that. So I'd like to end now. I don't want to take the whole entire of your day, but thank you so much for being here, Kathie. But I do want to end with something that you wrote at the beginning of your book that really connected to me, and I just really appreciated, and I'd like to read it to the viewers now. Are you disconnected from the whispers of your heart? Do you feel unworthy of happiness? Have you unwrapped the divine gifts that you've been given? Life is precious, and feeling happy is your birthright. We make ourselves available to embrace the abundance around us when we center on being grateful and have the courage to step into the truth that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Inspiration in action will change the outcome in your life as you discover how to co-create with the law of attraction using some amazing power tools. Believe and receive. So I highly recommend this book, Inspiration in Action, A Woman's Guide to Happiness, and men can read it too, by the lovely Kathie Donovan. Kathie, thank you so much for being here with us today. I think people definitely got a better sense of this side of your work. I know a lot of people are connected with the regional contact side and all of your broadcasting, but now I think it's amazing to see that you're moving in this new direction and teaching and doing workshops and seminars. And I'm just so excited for what's next to come in your life. And I just want to say thank you so much for being with me today.
It's my pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed our talk.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye, Kathie.
Bye.
So thank you so much for joining me for that awesome conversation with Kathie Donovan. I certainly loved it. I hope you got something from that too. And if you're looking for Kathie's book, Inspiration in Action, A Woman's Guide to Happiness, go to her website, kathiedonovan.com, and find out all the things she's doing with workshops and seminars and how you can stay connected with Kathie. Thanks again for joining me. Have a wonderful day.